Welcome back. We get a whole host of questions from our NRI viewers, but one which we don't get very often is, how do I, as an NRI, get a home loan in India? The power of dollars is such that most NRIs end up funding an entire property purchase through their own savings. But recently, we have started getting a few questions where NRIs do want to know how do they get a home loan. So today we have, of course, India's best known experts on loans and home loans specifically, Harsh Roongta, CEO of ApnaPaisa.com. Harsh, thank you so much for joining in. Actually, even I was quite astounded to see those questions. So it seems that even though they might have money, but they would still like to know how they can leverage in India. So go ahead and give us an explanation. How, I mean, first of all, how eligible I am compared to, let's say, a regular resident Indian, and what are the perks for prerequisites for an NRI to get a home loan?
So first, I think a quick definition of what constitutes an NRI. I think one are people who are Indian citizens but who are staying abroad and have stayed abroad for some time on employment. Then there is this whole concept of PIO, or the persons of Indian origin, who are not Indian citizens but who themselves earlier probably were citizens, or their parents were citizens, or their grandparents were citizens of free India, or their spouses are Indian citizens. They become persons of Indian origin. No, both of them are eligible to get loans for acquisition of properties in India. They can acquire any kind of real estate property except agricultural property. So they can't acquire agricultural property. But I think most of your queries, most of the viewer queries anyway would pertain to residential property. So there, I think the eligibility criteria would normally be worked out very similar to what a resident would be, with two exceptions. One, I think, is the country in which you are currently working, and if that has exchange control regulations that prevent money from being sent outside and applies to certain countries in Africa or maybe other smaller countries, there of course even eligibility might be a problem. But otherwise, where there is a free exchange regime, then there is no eligibility issue. Second, most banks typically, there is this general perception, which is not necessarily true, that all NRIs are very moneyed people, and therefore, although there is no regulation, most banks give lower tenure loans to NRIs, maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years, although 20-year tenures are available as well.
Alright, so in terms of paperwork, Harsh, so you're saying eligibility criteria aren't any different from resident Indians, but in terms of paperwork, is there a lot more paperwork that an NRI needs to do? Is there a special bank account that he needs to open?
So he need not open a special bank account, though having an account in India does help, whether it is a NRE account or an NRO account. So basic difference between an NRE account and an NRO account is that an NRE account, the money is repatriable back to his country. In NRO account, the repatriation is also possible, but with a lot of limitations. If you have an account, it helps, but it's not necessary to get a home loan. But in terms of documentation, obviously, if you're working somewhere in another country, the proof that you are working there, similar to residents, I mean, your salary slips, whatever passes for Form 16 in those countries, a proof that tax is being deducted at source, or social security benefits are being given to you, some proof of the employment. And typically, most countries have regulations on work permits for foreigners. So especially if you are an Indian citizen, then you would have those work permit documentation, or your visa that allows you to work there. So passport, visa that allows you to work there, plus your employment documentation, and then the other standard stuff. I mean, your income, where are you earning from? So those details, your proof of identity, which is essentially your passport. If you have some Indian assets and Indian incomes, then proof of that through the bank account, etc. And typically the documents preferably can be attested at a nearby consulate, though that's not necessarily always required.
All right. So fair enough. So it's easy enough for NRIs to get a home loan in India to buy residential property. Harsh, now that we have you with us, very interestingly, Axis Bank has launched a home loan product with a built-in EMI waiver scheme, which is called that happy ending home loans. Now, pretty much it's the bank will write off the last 12 installments if the customer stays with it for at least 15 years and also pays very regular EMIs. It's being offered at the same rate as a regular loan to new customers under the floating rate option. What do you make of it? I mean, I'm just wondering, knocking off 12 EMIs, 14 years you pay. If you're a good customer, then you don't pay one whole year. Is that a big benefit?
Assume the best case scenario of say 20 years, and that you completely prepay at the end of 15 years. You have to minimum carry the loan for 15 years. It would make a difference of roughly about 25 basis points or 0.25%. So assuming the rate remains constant, say you entered into a 10.75, effectively because of that last 12-month write-off, you would get about 10.5. So you get a IRR difference of about 0.25%. Not at all bad. So I think it's so the good points of this scheme are, it's that way an excellent scheme, innovative scheme. It's one way of getting your customers to hang on to you once they have spent some time with you, and in a perfectly valid way. But if I was to look at the other side, would I go for this scheme if my interest rate that I am paying is higher than what I would pay somebody else? There I think it will not really work, because if some bank is offering me 10.5 from day one versus say the 10.75, I am just giving an illustrative example, then maybe I would go for 10.5 because I am already getting that benefit upfront. Why should I wait 15 years to get that benefit? So the scheme is good, provided the interest rate is similar, interest rate is the same as any other bank that you might get for. But let me just make, so excellent scheme, but just let me make a prediction, okay, and let's see whether that will come true. The prediction is, I think the benefit is taking just far too long to come. I mean, 15 years is far too long a period. Most home loans are paid off within 8 or 9 years. I think you will see a variant of this scheme either from Axis Bank or somebody else, where you will start getting benefits in the first 3 years or 5 years, etc. Lower benefit, but you will definitely start getting benefits. So I think we will see some changes in this scheme. Post that, the take up on the scheme will be much higher.
Fair enough. So that's very well explained, Harsh. So good product, but too long a wait to actually avail of the benefits. So let's see if the product changes a little bit, and every 4 years maybe or 5 years you can knock off another 3 months of your EMI. That would, I think, encourage people more. But thanks very much for coming in today and taking all our questions, and of course explaining on the Axis Bank product as well as what it takes for NRIs to get a home loan. Thanks again.
Always a pleasure.
All right, we're going to move back a little bit to the commercial space.